Okay, welcome everyone. Monday night shir happening. Monday night. It is the week before Purim. And we've discussed in the past the sugya everybody wants to analyze how Esther was traveling back and forth between two husbands. And as juicy as that discussion is, it's not the topic tonight. We've been there. We didn't exhaust it, it's true. No topic in Torah can never truly be exhausted. But tonight we're going to talk about also an under-the-belt topic that, for whatever reason, is it's not given too much attention. And that is Haman's promiscuous reverie, his fantasies with Esther. What am I talking about? Well, let's begin. Let's begin with number one. Number one is from the Sefer Monois Halevi, because it's 3 papers tonight, and anybody that's joining us online, you should be able to click on the link underneath the video and follow along source by source. The Monois Halevi is a classical work on Megillas Esther from Reb Shlomo El Kavetz, who was one of the master Kabbalists during the 1500s. He was a student of Rav Yosef Kaira. Before they came to Tzfas, they were together in Turkey. And when Reb Shlomo was in Turkey, in Edirna, I believe, somewhere there, he was engaged to be married, and there's certain gifts that a chosn is supposed to give to the kala during engagement. Right, the same thing always happens. You buy flowers every week, and they say, I don't need flowers every week. And you stop buying flowers, and 6 months goes by. Where are the flowers? I thought you don't want. You have to understand, right? You have to understand everything in the proper context, ratio, and understanding. So he didn't have what to give, so he wrote a sefer. It's hard to know if it was for his kala's father, or her brothers, and it was a commentary on the Megillah, Monois Halevi. It's an in-depth commentary, fabulous. And he does a lot of quoting from many obscure Sfarim that predated him. And he beautifies the Megillah. He really does justice to interpreting the Megillah. And in the part of the story of after the first party, the first mishta with Esther, Haman, and Achashverosh. So Haman leaves and he feels like he's on top of the world, except for the fact that Mordechai is being stubborn, right? He had everything in the world, but the one thing, Mordechai, bothered him to no end. And there's a famous word of the Torah Tumima. The Gemara says in Chulin, Haman min ha-Torah minayin. Where do you find Haman in the Torah? Hamin ha'etz, in Parshas Bereshis, when the Eibishter said, you ate from the tree you weren't supposed to eat from. So the Torah Tmima asks, what's the connection to Haman? And he says, Haman had everything a person could desire: wealth, power, fame, huge family, over 200 kids according to one opinion in Gemara. But there was one small thing that he couldn't have. He didn't have dominion over Mordechai, and it consumed him. And he couldn't enjoy what he had because of that one thing that was out of his reach. So the Gemara in Chulin is asking, Haman min ha-Torah minayin, where do you find such a phenomenon in the Torah? And the answer is from the Eitz Hadas, because Adam was allowed to consume mikol eitz hagar nochal toichel. They could eat from any fruit. But the one thing they couldn't have, it gave them no rest. That was the one thing they needed to have. Azoi sagt the Torah Tzmima. So Haman calls a meeting, right? An urgent express meeting. And he tells his chacham, he tells his wife that, you know where I was? I was at a party with Esther, and it was just me. It was just me. So look in number one. V'kama hiflig bedover hazisir Reb Shlomo El Kabat's writing, and he quotes Hachosid Harav Rabbi Elazar mi Germaiza, the famous Rabbi Elazar of Worms, Rabbi Elazar of Germaiza, the greatest student of Rabbi Yehuda HaChosid, so from the great Rishonim. end of 1100s and early 1200s. He writes in his Sefer Sha'arei Bina Shekosov, he writes, when Haman told everyone by the meeting that Ani koru lo im hamelech, that I'm called to her with the king, right? And tomorrow as well, I'm called to her with the king. Imrot Sisi, Haman told them, if I wanted, hoisa nishma selai, Esther would give in to my advances. If I was toiveya her, she's married to Achashverosh, right? And she's married to Mordechai. Well, now there's a third man contesting, and he feels it's not a contest, b'chlal. He says she's foolish, she desires me. From her end, she's in. It's my call now. Imrot Sisi. If I want, for sure, nishma selai. And that's what Haman told his wife and everybody there. So, fragt Reb Shloim el Kabatz v'adover nira zor. This thing, so strange, so bizarre. Haman would say it, but Haman would feel it. Like, where did Haman in the world dream this up from? And Bechlal, he says, where did Rebbe Elazar Gemaiza dream this up from? Where did he see it from? This is not found in your local medrash. It's not in Medrash Rabbah, it's not in the Yalkut Shemoni. Where did he get it from? Va'ani Omer, so I'll tell you like this. Gavra Rabbah Omar Milsa loisa sachichu alei. The Gemara says, if a great man says something, you don't laugh, you try and understand it. The daughters that I think I see where Rebbe Elazar learned it from the Shinui of the Mikra. Because in the beginning, Hascholas Piyu, first Haman says, Loi hevia Esther Amalka. Esther Amalka didn't bring anyone except for me. And then he says, tomorrow, Ani koru, I'm called to her. Changes the wording from bringing to being called. Ashalama hoya achris Piyu. Why, in the end of his sentence, Ani koru, I'm called. He should have said, Ani muvalo, like you said in the beginning, or both times say korila. Oy afloy kora Esther today, and also lamachar ani korila. Why did he switch from the bringing to the calling? So he says, therefore, that's the hint that the kora refers to mishkal, to intimacy, and he brings a raya of a pasuk v'yashavtel pesach beiso likra loivrei derech, to call over there about the zoyna means to call for intimacy. Go a couple lines down, third line to the bottom. Now, okay, so that's where Rebbe Elazar of Worms got it from. But what's going on in Haman's mind? Like, why was Haman thinking this? What signs did he see? Haman had so much gaiva, Allah al-libay bevadai, hasofek shahaya l'melech. The king already had a question about this. The king already had a question about this. The Gemara says in Megillah that the night, the night between the two meals, Achashverosh couldn't sleep. Achashverosh was wondering why. Why did Esther Bechlal invite anyone? It could have just been me and her. She wants to invite people, invite many people. What's this with Haman? And he was worried maybe the two are getting together to kill him. So that's one conspiracy. Maybe the two of them were coming to kill him. But also the conspiracy, maybe the two of them had something going on. How do I know Achashverosh had a suffix? Maybe Haman had Esther. Not only were conspiring to kill him, but they had some relationship going on. So quickly join me in number 3. In number 3, the Gemara in Megillah says, the Gemara wants to know why Esther invited Haman to the meal. Yeah, why? And there's a whole host of answers, many, many answers of all the Tanoim and Amiroim. Rabbi Shua ben, look at number 3, by Shua ben Karcha Omer, Esther's cheshbon was like this, Asbir loy ponim. I wanted to show favor to Haman in front of Achashverosh, Kedei sheyahareg hu v'hi, so we should both get killed. In order that Achashverosh should see me favoring Haman, thinking I have something going on for Haman, I'm on the lookout for Haman, I have some secret relationship with Haman, and then he'll knock us both off. And Esther thought hopefully that way maybe all of Haman's plans will unravel as well, right? Once the instigator of the plan dies, maybe the whole thing will fall apart. That's Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. Once we're reading that, just to continue by the way, Rabbi Gamliel says, Melech hafach b'chan hoya. Rabbi Gamliel said that Achashverosh was a flip-flop king, always going back and forth. So Esther thought, if I convince him by the meal to kill Haman, but if Haman's not there, by the time we get hold of him, Achashverosh may change his mind. So I need Haman to be there so we can act on it immediately. And then Rabbi Gamliel says, we still need Rabbi Lazar Hamidoi's word. To Tanya, Rabbi Lazar Hamidoi's a different word. Kinasai b'melech, kinasai b'sadim. That Esther was making Haman the envy of the king and of everybody else. What's the pshat? The fact that Achashverosh and Esther are having a meal and Haman's there, it's as if Esther's considering Haman to be like a king. So he will make Haman the envy of Achashverosh and the envy of all the Sodom. So Belazar Mardoi is different than Rabbi Shua ben Karch is about a under-the-table relationship of Haman and Esther. Rabbi Lazar Mardoi is a different word. It's the fact that she's honoring him with the same honor as Achashverosh, right? That itself will irk and arouse the ire of the king. By the way, there is a marsha, I'll tell you, a difficult marsha. He wants to, why did Rabbi Gamliel say that we need Rabbi Lazar Hamidoi's word? All the vertlach before, don't cut it. So marsha explains, all the vertlach before Rabbi Lazar Hamidoi explain why Haman was there, but it doesn't explain why he was the only one. She should have invited other people as well. They all explain why Haman was there, but why weren't there more ministers? Like what would you would have expected to have many people there? Only Rabbi Lazar explains that. She dafka wanted Haman to be the only one there, so everyone will be envious as if he's being treated like the king. I don't understand the marshal. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha's word answers that as well. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha said she wanted to favor Haman in order Achashverosh should think there's something going on between them. Well, that'll only work if it's the two of them. If there's 50 ministers there, how would she give that sentiment to Achashverosh? So I don't know. Maybe somebody can explain that marsha. But either way, Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says Esther set this up that Achashverosh should be concerned that there's some relationship. So back to number one, so back to the end of Rab Shlomo el-Kabatz, the second last line, he says what was a suffix by the king was certain in Haman's heart. Ki amelech kinala kumedubi. So I explained before, he says that the king was already very jealous. Rab Shlomo el-Kabatz explains earlier that when Achashverosh heard that by the first meal it's going to be him and Haman, he already, inside, he was very uneasy. What's this all about? Why? What's going on? Why is Haman coming? Why only him? So Achashverosh had this inner turmoil inside of him. By Achashverosh was only a suffix. By Haman, it was a given. Because of his gaiva. Haman, because he was on top of the world, he had such gaiva, he was certain that Esther not only would fall for him, already fell for him. And it's up to him to give. It's up. If he says yeah, they'll have a secret affair, a secret relationship. V'hu hiskim b'daitoi, and Haman decided ki kein adavar. Achashverosh was unsure. Haman was sure. To the point she'ein meineh. I could say the only thing holding it back is he's okay. Esther, not only she would consider it, she's there. She's already there. Imhu yirtze ein meniyim imen. If he wants, she's not going to hold back. So the question is what? I mean, because of the gaiva, he came. Who dares covet the queen? If the king senses that you're coveting the queen, you'll be a head shorter. You'll be a head shorter. The truth is, Bichlal, when it comes to being choimed, eishes reyecha, we had a shir a couple of weeks ago about loy sachmoid. We didn't mention there, but Rav Osher Weiss, he is quite adamant that when it comes to items, right, the Rambam paskins clearly that to be over loy sachmoid based on the mechilta, there has to be a ma'aser with the chemda. You have to covet it to the point that you convince the person to sell it to you, right? And even if you pay for it, and even if the guy says, okay, I'll sell it, as the Rambam holds. The Rambam does say there's something called loy sisave. Loy sisave, the Rambam believes, is a stage prior to that. Even if you don't act upon it, but if in your heart you reach a point that you desire the item so much and you make cheshbonus and you set your mind to how you can acquire that item, you violate lo sisava. Rabbi Asher Weiss believes that that's all when it comes to items, but when it comes to eishes lo sachmed, eishes reyecha, you don't actually have to act upon it. Just coveting in the heart already violates lo sachmed. He says at most, it'll be like the Rambam's description of lo sisava, that if in your heart you reach a conclusion of how you're going to get the woman, you're going to convince her husband to divorce her, etc., then you violate. But he feels when it comes to eishes reyecha, even the lo sachmed elements in the heart. And he questions the Netziv, the Netziv writes mefurish that even eishes reyecha has the same guidelines as any item of your friend. You only violate lo sachmed if you actually get your hands on it. And Rabbi Weiss, he disagrees with him. And he questions the Netziv. But the truth is, it's not just the Netziv. It's a mefurish semeh in Shchosh Mishpat Shin Nun Tes. It's a mefurish minchas chinuch. And the Maharil Diskin and many, and the Greis Achronim, they all learn actually that eishes reyecha does fall under the same guidelines as all the Abeis reyecha and Sadeh and all these things, that the lo sachmed element, you only violate if there's a maisa. You actually get your hands on the woman. In fact, the Maharil Diskin is a shayla the other way. When it comes to an item, you can convince the guy to sell it, you give him the money. The moment it leaves his domain, it goes into your domain. But he says that if you convince someone to divorce his wife, now she's just a grusha. Now she's an eligible, and then you come and acquire her. He says faket. He says he doesn't understand how you would even be over there. It's like convincing someone to be mafkir an item and then acquiring it. So he finds Heiche Timtzis actually interesting of how you have a case that you convince someone to divorce his wife and automatically she's mekudesh to you. So the truth is, you see that the Gedolei Achronim all learned that if somebody thinks in his heart about another woman, you won't be over lo sachmed. There are those who agree with Rabbi Asher Weiss, but the Gedolei Achronim seem to disagree. So the Netziv is in good company. Even lo sisava, the Rambam says, you're only over if you plan and you come to an agreement in your mind, you settle on a plan of how you're going to get hold of a specific woman. I'll also just add, generally there's a rule, machshava, an evil thought, the Eibusha does not connect to action, right? Yet, we know when it comes to thoughts of znus, the Gemara says, Hirhure Aveira, Koshem Aveira. The Gemara says, thinking about the Aveira is even worse than the actual sin. So Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, the great Kabbalist and Rav in Italy, Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, in the Divrei Yosef, I think it's Simon Samach around there, he says like this: when you think about stealing, even about killing, he says, the thought itself is not a sin. Even if you think about killing someone, right? You do it all the time, right? You never want to kill the person next to you. So, if you don't act upon it, the thought is just a machshava, it's just a fleeting thought, it doesn't count. But when it comes to znus, to imagine intimacy, that itself is an avera. V'nishmartu mikol dovara. That itself, that's different. This is not governed by the rule that it's just a machshava. This is different. The thought itself is evil. Which means, according to him, if someone doesn't fantasize about intimacy itself, but you make plans of how to locate a certain zayna, and it falls through, I would say that's regular machshava, that doesn't count. It's only the thought itself is about the intimacy. Point of all this is, if somebody's stam choymed eishes chaverei, if somebody's stam, whatever, it should never happen, but if it does, it's definitely not a good midah, and it can be very destructive. But what are you going to be over? You protect yourself from thoughts of intimacy. So it's just, someone, imagine if. According to the Asher Weiss, you're over the deraisa lo sachmed. There are a few who learn that, but I think Gedolei Achronim Befeish would say no. Even the Sefer HaChinuch who holds that lo sisava, you violate, even if you just think about it, you don't have to make plans in your mind how to get it. He's more machmir the Rambam. But he does say you have to be toikeya your machshavtecha. You have to really focus on it. Anyhow, Al Kapanim, back to our thing over here. So Haman's being chomed, but chomed the wife of the king? And it's not just that he has a chemda, he has a desire, he covets her. He convinced that that she's ready to go. Why would he think this? Why would he let his thoughts go there? When it comes to a queen, you're risking your life letting your thoughts go there. Because if the king even sees you looking in the direction of the queen, he'll kill you. Why did Haman let his thoughts go there? What's he thinking? What's going on? Okay, so that is our first shaila. Join me in number 4. Lechem lefi hataf. Reb Yitzchak Chai Bukovzo. There's a few ways of pronouncing the last name. This is probably not one of them. But Bukovzo, Buzokvo, Buchbozo, Bukovzo. I saw somewhere Bukovzo. So he was a great rabbi in northern Africa. Okay, so in Tunisia and Libya, born around the year 1850. He lives about 80 years. But I saw he actually quotes the Barditchever in his Sefer. So he was a Kabbalist and a Rav, and he wrote many, many works. And one of them is a Sefer Lechem Lefi Hataf. Okay? And look what he writes in number 4. Mashakasav Rabbi Lozer of Gurmaiza B'Shadei Bina. It's brought in the Manos Halevi. And the Chidah quotes it. And we'll see that soon. B'Shei Maimer Azal, that there's some medrash. The Haman said to his friends that if he would be Toveya, we're number 4, if he would be Toveya Esther, she would agree. It's so illogical. Who would cast their eyes on a queen? You're putting your life on the line. If the king sees you even looking at the queen's direction, he'll kill you. In addition, what was his evidence? That he saw in Esther, that he was mispar, that he was gloating to the public, that if he would desire, if he would just ask her, she's already in. What's the raya? Because she invited him to the meal. She invited him. That's what queens do. They don't just have a late night supper, them and the king. They have a whole afternoon suda, and there's people there. Likrei Malach, from the Gedolim Malchusai. Just like Haman himself commented that no one else was there but me. What's that mashma? There should have been other people there. Punkt, he was chosen more than the others. But from here you see that that's the path of the queen. She has guests there. So I don't really understand that argument. There should have been others and there weren't. So that's exactly Haman's point. Okay? But he says, Ma'ad also l'shtuzeh. That's the real shayla. Meaning, just because one meal, okay, also the next day 2 meals. That's the whole evidence he has. Ma'ad l'shtuzeh l'demois, to imagine, b'daitoi, to fantasize in his mind, shetisratzah, she would desire lishkevima, that she's in as long as she's waiting for him to say yeah. So this is the shaila, right? It's a powerful shaila. What in the world's going on? So, join me in number 2 for a second, okay? Another Gemara in Megillah. Okay, we have a fascinating journey, okay? So, and by the way, you have to stay to the end. The end is going to be something so remarkable. Number 2. So when Esther points in the second meal that the troublemaker is this guy Haman over here. So Achashverosh was full of fury, so he exited the room. He went to the garden to cool off. Va'ashkech, number 2, he found Malachim that appeared like people that were cutting down all of his trees in the garden. So he told them, Ma'yuv daich, what are you guys doing? They said, Haman instructed us to cut down these trees, right? And then he blew it, right? Even my garden, that's it, I'm done with Haman. Also the base, he comes into the house. So the Gemara says, and then you pick up the pasuk. V'Haman noifel ala mitzvah. The pasuk says, what does Achashverosh see when he returns? He sees Haman was lying on Esther's bed. It looked like he was trying to violate her, or even if it was beratzim, whatever, he was cuddling with her, let's just say. So the Gemara asks, noifel, falling, nafal mi boile. Should have said he fell. Because Haman fell on her bed to ask her, right? To ask her to, forgiveness, pardon. And so when Achashverosh came, Haman had already fallen. Why did it say he was falling? It's a Gemara shal. So Amar Abba Lazar, I'll tell you why. When Haman saw that Achashverosh was coming in, he quickly wanted to get up. He did not want to be found in that compromised position. Right, so he was already on the bed to plead for his life. He sees Achashverosh coming in. He wants to jump out of that bed as fast as he can. Malamed, but a Malach came, and pushed him down, kept him down. So when Achashverosh came, he was falling because he was trying to get up, but he couldn't get up. That's the meaning of he was currently falling. When Achashverosh said, "Vai mi beisa, vai mi bara," woe from the house, woe from the outside, woe from the outside that you're cutting down my trees, and woe from the inside. And then Vayomer Melech Hagam Lichbaish Esamalchim. But even in the house, what do you mean even in the house? Besides what you did in the field, in the garden, also in the house, and he blew it, right? So that's the end of Haman. So the Chida in number 6 in his Sefer Nachal Eshkol, we're going to see quite a few Sfarim of the Chida tonight, and there would have been more. You're lucky it's we had to leave some of them in the library, but we'll be quoting in Mitzvah Shem from a number of Sfarim of the Chida, because the Chida talks about this sugya like nobody else, and this is just one of many things that he wrote so much, he fleshed out so many ideas, and it's just beautiful. So in number 6 is his commentary Nachal Eshkol on the Megillah. And the Chida asks a powerful question on this. But when Achashverosh killed Haman, what was the last straw on the camel's back? Hagam lichbaish esamalkim. He said, you're trying to take my queen? Was Haman trying to do that? Haman was beseeching for his life, and he tried to get away, and the Malach pushed him. Haman was being framed for a crime he had no intention to commit, thanks to a Malach. How could the Eibusha, through an angel, frame a person? God doesn't do that. You hear the Shaila? Look at number 6. The Haman was falling on the bed. Amr Razal beperek Kama de Megillah. In the end of the first parak, a Malach came and pushed him on the bed. V'yesh lachker. Haman was not mechaven. Haman at that point, even though we saw from he had the interest in Esther, but at that point he was hoping he was just fighting for his life. How could a Malach come and push him ad levoy chamas hamelech until the Melech came so angry? Hagam lichbosh haloi zeh sheker. It wasn't true. So Malach also came. How could the Malach do it? I understand the question is how could a Malach frame even a criminal, but it's sheker. God is emes. God is true. And Haman was actually he was killed for a crime he didn't commit. How do you explain that? So he gives 2 answers, okay? The simple pshat, we have a general rule. Who also if somebody acts improperly, he's treated the same way. The Eibush Hashem Tzulcha, the Baal Shem Tov said, the Eibush is your shadow. The move you make, that's the move that God makes. So, is found in Gemara, for example, if somebody puts a gun to a woman's head, agree to marry me or I'll kill you, right? So she says, okay. So she agrees. She didn't want to die. Shitaka didn't want to die, so this was her way out, so she agreed. And you gave her the money of the Kiddushin. So Minat Torah should work. But the Chachamim said, you acted like a shvantz, you acted incorrectly, so we're going to deal with you the same way. And we're going to be mavato the Kiddushin that should have worked, Minat Torah should have worked. But you act against the law, we'll act against the law too. So says the Chida, Haman was mechuyev revavos misus, the myriads of deaths on all of his avainas and his father's avainas. You're Haman's lawyer? that Nebuch Haman's lawyer, Haman, he wasn't guilty. Fakert. Because Haman was a snake his whole life, that's why Dafki's downfall came out in a crooked way. There was no one more crooked than Haman. So Fakert, that's exactly why his downfall came in such a way. And he says, Ein ze klum. He said, we're going to defend him. The amount of his avoinus, milsus utrasel lagabe. This is not, he doesn't deserve any defense over here. Va'oid, in addition, the Malach didn't say anything. And Malach pushed him. Achashverosh made a cheshbon. Why did Achashverosh think that Haman was begging from Esther? Why did Achashverosh think that Haman was using the opportunity to lie with her? Why did Achashverosh think that even Haman wouldn't be doing that now? He must have some other intention. And Achashverosh fooled himself. He should have thought, he should have realized that Haman fell out of fear. So this is Achashverosh's fault. Don't blame the Malach for this. So that's answer number one. Answer number two, Omnam says the Chidah, I found that Chazal say that Haman told his Oyavav, if he would ask Esther for intimacy, she was Misrata, she's right there, like the Rav Monos Halevi brings in the Pasuk Aflevi Esther. So says the Chidah Meredik, listen, that means Haman in his mind was fantasizing over Esther. Esther's a married woman, at least one husband, maybe two, right? For a goy, Achashverosh is considered a meiser. For a goy, Achashverosh is mamish a meiser, like Rashi writes in the beginning of Kisavai. Umemela nearer that by goyim that Achashverosh is mamish an action. So Haman ultimately Achashverosh killed him. What was the last straw on the camel's back? That he was found in an act of intimacy with Esther. He was innocent. No, he wasn't. He was guilty of that very crime, because since in his mind he was thinking about it. So for a goy, a machshav is like a ma'aseh. He did it. He did it. He already did it. Ba malach v'pilei kedin v'nimis, because this was just. Because since it was going on in his mind, his fantasies, he was imagining it, he was thinking about it. For a goy, it's mamish like he did it. So therefore the Malach didn't frame him. He wasn't framed for a crime he didn't commit. He did commit it. Those are the two answers of the Chidah. Okay? What we're going to see in Mirz Hashem is another answer for the Chidah's Shaila of how the Malach framed him. And this is our second question. Our first question is the Lechem Lefi Ataf's Shaila. What in the world is going on in the mind of Haman? Why was he fantasizing about this? We're going to answer that question and this question in the same Bechad HaMachte. Es wird sein gut in Mirz Hashem, because not because of me, but because of all those that are going to guide us. Okay, so there's a story in Sefer Shoftim. We read it a couple weeks ago in the Haftorah of Parshas Beshalach. There was a war in Sefer Shoftim. In the beginning, there's a war. Yavin, the king of Canaan, had a general. His Sar Tzava, his general, his name was Sisra, who was a major anti-Semite. He tormented, he persecuted, he harassed, he terrorized the Jewish nation for years. Now this Sisra was invincible. The Medrash says when he would roar, the animals would be rooted, frozen to their spot. Right? And he was invincible, and he was successful, victorious in battle after battle, until his downfall came when Barak ben Avinoam, together with Aveira, led a war against him. And Sisra's, all of his army and all of the tanks he had at the time, these iron wagons, he had strong military artillery, but whatever. But miracles, his army was washed away by a river. Sisra himself flees from the battlefield. And he goes by a little tent. Who lived in this oihel? A man by the name of Chevers HaKeini, who's from the house of Yisroi. Chevers was married to a woman, Yael, and Yael is called Yael, the wife of Chevers HaKeini. And Yael says, come inside, come inside. And Sisra says, okay, I'll take refuge here. If anyone knocks on the door and asks, did somebody stop her, you'll tell them no. He asked for water, he was thirsty. She gave him milk and butter, and he fell asleep. And she took a peg from the tent, and she pushed it through his temple, and he died. That's the story over there. So, there seems to be a very interesting debate between the Gemara and the Medrash Rabbah. Okay, we're going to go a bit of a journey, Bachram. You'll see how it all ties together. Absolutely fascinating. So, in number 9, join me in number 9, Medrash Rabbah, in Vayikra Rabbah, Shloisha Heim Sheborchu Min Ha'Aveira. There are 3 people that fled from sin. V'shitef HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shema Yamoim. And the Eibishter put his name on them, almost as a testimony, like the Shvatim, right? And then the Elohein, Yosef is number 1, Yael, the wife of Chevers, and Palti ben Laish, who married Michal while she was perhaps married to David, and we've spoken about that too many times. It's never too many, Chas v'shalom. But Yosef Minayin, how do we know Yosef? Shenamar Eidus bihi Yosef Samai. Pasuk in Tehillim, right? Yosef is called Yehosef. What's Yehosef? Where did the hay come from? So by the way, I think the Chevers says that Yosef's name was always supposed to be Yehosef, but when he switched wombs in utero with based on Targum Yonis and Ben Ozil, when he and Dinah switched wombs, so he left something behind, she left something behind. Her name should have been Din, because Leah made a judgment on herself. But Yosef left his letter Hay in his mother's stomach, so she took the Hay and became Dinah. She left some things behind. Okay, we spoke about this in the past as well, let's leave that. The Chidah says that when they switched wombs and Yosef came to that womb, she left, her Barbie dolls or things like that. He grew up in a girl's bedroom. That's why Yosef throughout his life was Mesalsel, Basara. Okay, very interesting things that need more elaboration. Not for now. But here the Medrash says, what's the Yehosef with the hay? Is the Eibishter putting his name. The Eibishter tests Shaloi Noga. He did not touch the wife of Potiphar. He did not touch her. What about Yael? As it says, Vateitza Yael to greet Sisra. The pasuk says, V'techaseh, she covered when Sisra was tired and she gave him the milk and the butter. It puts you to sleep, right? It's the reason why Seder after lunch is it's like a dormitory over here. Everyone's sleeping because then we get the chveis, flour and milk at every lunch. Somehow is another rearrangement of flour and milk, of hot milk, and it puts everybody to sleep. Fine. Vatechaseu basmicha. After he was exhausted from the milk and the butter and the fleeing for his life, right? He had a war that day. She covered him with a smicha. What's a smicha? Rabbanon dahacha, in Israel they say besudra, it was like a handkerchief. Rabbanon de taman in Bavel they say mishichla, some other item. Reish Lakish says no. Chazan al kol mikra. I learned through the whole Tanakh, right? That, by the way, means that Amoraim learned Tanakh, right? The shir we had a while back, and I don't find anywhere kli that's called smicha. He says smicha is not an item. It's shmi koi. My name is here. Shmi, my name, says the Eibishter, testifies on her, Shaloi noga ba'oisarosha, that Sisra did not touch her. And then the Medrash speaks about Palti, but that's not for our discussion. That's a Mefudash Medrash, very clear. So Shitaka covered him with a blanket or something, but while she did that, he didn't touch her. That's the simple reading of the Medrash. So she covered him, but she kept her distance. Look in number 8. This is a Gemara in Nazir, a Gemara in Yavamas, a Gemara in Horius. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Gedoyla Aveira Lishma mi Mitzvah Shaloi Lishma. That famous statement that an Aveira Lishma is greater than a Mitzvah Shaloi Lishma. You ever heard that? If someone does an Aveira for the sake of the Eibishter, that's holier than if you do a mitzvah for selfish personal reasons. So frekt the Gemara, come on. But Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, La'olam yasek adam b'toiro b'mitzvahs afilu shaloi lishman, shemitoich shaloi lishman ba lishman. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's mashma that a mitzvah shaloi lishma is like chopped liver. Even Aveira Lishma is greater. But Rav said that Torah and mitzvah shaloi lishman is important. You should do it because shemitoich shaloi lishman ba lishman, right? So it's not chopped liver. So how could it be that Aveira Lishma is greater? So Ella, the Gemara says, I hear the Shaila, so let's say they're equal. Eima ke mitzvah shaloi lishma. Okay. A mitzvah shaloi lishma is equal to an Aveira Lishma. And we had a shir about 4 years ago about Aveira Lishma. But the Chsiv, what's the raya from Yael? Because in the song of Devaira it says, Tevairach minoshim Yael, Yael, you should be benched more than the women. The wife of Chevers Keini. More than the women in the tent, you should be benched. Frek the Gemara, man noshim shabail. Who were the women in the tent that we're contrasting her with? Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. They were intimate with their husbands, shaloi lishma. What does that mean? They wanted to have children. So the intimacy with their husbands wasn't just for the sake of the zivug with a tzaddik, or it was for personal gain. It was a mitzvah shaloi lishma. But Yael did an Aveira with Sisra, as we'll see, but she did a Lishma. Now it says here she should be benched more than the women. So that sounds like that a mitzvah Shaloi Lishma is lower, like the original thought. But let's leave that. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so this is where this is found in the other Gemaras I mentioned before. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Sheva be'ilas bol oisei rasha. You think Sisra didn't touch Yael? 7 times. 7 acts of intimacy. That's why he became like a klap to Hashina. It was easy for to kill him. But because shenemar, this is in the song of Devaira. Bein ragleo kora he fell, nafal he fell, shachav he fell. How does the pasuk continue? Bein ragleo kora nafal, basher koran sham nafal shadud. Yeah. Okay. So 7 times it says that he fell. All of those are acts of intimacy. Rabbi Yochanan says 7 times, and that's mamash why he fell asleep. He was partially exhausted. So, frek the Gemara, what? V'hakomisanya mi be'ilah delay. You're telling me Yael enjoyed his be'ilah? What's the question of the Gemara? She enjoyed his be'ah. Some learn this is the halachic shaila. Because if she was married to Chevers Keini, so she's a married woman, she's committing adultery, which is one of the big 3. You can't do that even to save lives. So maybe saving a whole nation is different. Okay, but the question, before you know that answer, the question would be that she's doing one of the big 3. But Rabbeinu Tam's student, the Rivom, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Mordechai, Toshav quotes a few times in Shas, the famous Shitta of the Rivom, right, in Sanhedrin, Ksuvas, etc., that he says that you know when Gili Arais is one of the big 3, that you can't do it to save your life is if you're doing it actively. But even for a man, let's say a man is already, the Aveira is already hard, and the Goyim hidbikuhu, they push you into an erva, the Rivam says you don't have to resist and give up your life. Passive you're allowed to do. And the Rivam says a woman can always make herself passive. Doesn't have to be, it depends, but she can make herself passive. So if she's passive, then it's not considered one of the big 3. Passive Gili Arais you can do to save your own life. For sure the lives of many, many people. So it could be the Gemara is asking though, but she had Geshmak, and Hano is considered Kamaisa. Could be the Gemara Shai was if she enjoyed, then her enjoyment is like an action. So it's like an action, then it becomes one of the big 3. Why was it allowed? That's how some learn. Punkt Toisus in Yevamis and in Sanhedrin says it's befedish, not the Gemara Shaila. He learns the Gemara Shaila Stam that why was she better than the Mois? If she enjoyed it, then it's an Aveira and Shaloi Lishma. That's how Toisus learns the Shaila. What's the Lishma? She did it and she enjoyed it. The Mois enjoyed it, but they were with the Avos and had beautiful kids. Except for Esav. But she didn't have Aveira and she had Hano. That's how Toisus learns the Shaila. So the Gemara's response was she had no Hano. You're kidding, from Sisra, from a Goy, it's repulsive. It's repulsive. Just like by Esther, every time she was with Achashverosh, she was repulsive. Rav Shlomo El-Kabetz actually writes that Achashverosh felt it, that she never enjoyed being with him. He felt it. that she was always like an anusa. She was always... And I wonder if that might have aided the situation of him thinking that she has her mind on a different man. Based on this idea that Achashverosh noticed that she wasn't into it, he didn't think she was Jewish, and that's why. So he's probably wondering, why is she... I reckon that might have had something to do. No one else says it, so it could Stam be glad to put him Torah, but it's the season of Purim. But I think it's actually very logical. It's very logical. That definitely wouldn't have helped the situation. When she invites Haman to the meal and he knows that if Achashverosh knows that his wife's not interested in him, and then she's busy inviting another man, 2 and 2 is 4, right? Fine, back to our... So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, come on, whatever a Rasha has to offer is raw by a tzaddik. Like it says, Lavan was told, the Eibishter told Lavan, don't speak to Yankov, not good, not bad. Bishloim the bad, I got it, but why don't you want Lavan to speak good? Because nothing Lavan has to offer does Yankov desire. Lav shmamina toivasa, when it comes to a Rasha, even the good things they have to offer is repulsive to a tzaddik. So Yael had no hana. But the Gemara says, Mefurish, she was with Sisra. And the Medrash says, Mefurish, that she was not. So look at number 11, the Radak, the Reb David Kimchi, the famous Mefurish, on the Pasuk Raglea Kor Anofel, he says, this is the Minig Haloshan, it's in the song of Aveira, right? You can't ask as extra words. It was a shira. A whole vort of the shira is you speak in poetic. That's the Minig, to be careful the words, to strengthen them. But what does it mean? Because he fell down, because that he fell down, dead, right? He never got up again. And where he crouched, he fell forever. Then he says, Yesh by drash. The Radak says there is a drasha, I think it's very far from the pshat, that the pasuk says 7 descriptions of him falling and lying in air. So Sheva be'ilas bal oisei rasha, he quotes Rabbi Yochanan. But he says, what I brought before in the word smicha, makchish zeh hadrash. Because he quoted the Medrash earlier, when it says she covered in besmicha, he quoted the Medrash Rabbah number 9, that God's shmicha, my name is here, they never touched each other. So Radak says mefurish a contradiction. And not just that, he seems to say that the Medrash that they didn't touch is much more, it fits much better with the psukim, it's much more substantiated, whereas the 7 be'ilis is a drash rochik. If you look at number 10, this is the Mahar Zav, one of the very important, Rabbi Einhorn, one of the great Meforshim on the Medrash Rabbah. And in number 10 he says, Tzarchi, and he's gone in the Medrash number 9, he says, I didn't get it. Mefurish in the Kosav, Bein Ragleh, Kora Nofal Shachav. And the Gemara says in Yavama 7 times there were bias. And the Medrash says they didn't touch. So he doesn't quote the Radak. He says there's no contradiction. No contradiction. How's there no contradiction? The Medrash doesn't mean that they never touched. What it means is like this. You have to say, Shekan in the Medrash, the Kavana is, she had no Kavana for the Aveira and had no benefit from the Aveira. It was disgusting to her. Her Kavana was l'shem Shemayim, to weaken him, to put him to sleep, and also, after 7 intimacies, the last thing he's expecting is that this woman's going to kill him. It was all a setup. L'hachlishay, to weaken him, l'rod until he falls asleep, right? And then she could kill him simply to save Yikol Yisrael miyadai. Because it was l'shem Shemayim, that's what the Eibishter testifies. I testify that Sisra didn't touch her, meaning there was no intimacy on her part of what you would call intimacy. There was no pleasure. It was revolting for her. It was disgusting. It was necessary. And that's it. Now, who could know the v'yediyah kazeh einzu elam yedeh yetzer? Only God could know this, and He sees what's hidden in the heart. And this is pshat gedoy la'aveira lishma. I mean, who knows who's lishma? God knows. The aveira we understand, but who says lishma? God knows. So the marzah. So this is a path that some meforshim take. The Medrash says loy noga boy. They didn't touch. What you're going to say by Yosef and Ashes Potiphar the same pshat? They were intimate, but Yosef didn't enjoy it? No, there obviously means they didn't touch. And so too by Michal and palti. There was a sword between them, the Gemara said, they didn't touch at all. So if the other two means they didn't touch at all, what are the chances that this one means something else completely? Also, the words he didn't touch her, it's very hard.
So why would he get the other one?
The milk, he was exhausted, running for his life, and the milk and the butter. It was a long day. It was a long day at work. He was at war.
Nothing to do with her then.
She weakened him he asked for water. Mayim shal chol. She didn't give him water. She gave him milk, not skim milk, the red milk, the very heavy milk. It was probably warm too, right? No fridge, so warm, heavy milk. It's a sleeping pill. It's a sleeping pill. So that's one approach. By the way, there's a lot of halachic discussion about what Yael did. It's almost like we presume Yael was Jewish. Yael was the wife of Chevers Keini. He's from Yisro's family. Rashi writes in Chumash, Yisro went to convert his family. To Shadl if he was successful. And was he successful with all of his family? This Chevers, where was this Chevers living? He was living outside the Jewish area. Why did Sisra take refuge in the tent? The Pasuk says, because there was good friendship between Chevers and the king Yavin. What's that all about? Yavin was anti-Semite. He was waging a campaign against the Jews for years. Oppressing the Jews for years. Chevers a friend? Mazeh. If you look at number 12, it's a Yalkut Shemaini. Yesh noshim chasidus giyarius. There are a number of women, pious women who are converts. Hagar, convert, right? Pari's daughter. Osnas. Now you're thinking that Osnas was the daughter of Dinah and Shem. That's one opinion, not this opinion. Tzipora was a giyaris. Shifra and Pua. You think they're Yocheved and Miriam or Elisheva. That's opinion and Saita. That's not this opinion. Bas Paroi, Bisha. Rochov, yeah, that everyone knows. Rus and Yael Eishes Chevers Keini. She was a convert. Now Rashi does write that Yael ended up being a shofet based on Medrash Rabbah in Rus Rabbah. There's a Medrash Rabbah that says that she was a shofet. So at some point she became a shofet, but according to this Medrash, she was a giyaris. You have to see this. Quickly jump to the next page, number 20. This is from the Shadal, who people we don't usually quote. Rab Shmuel David Lutzato. So he was in the 1800s, the times of the Tzemach Tzedek. He passed away about a year before the Tzemach Tzedek. Shmuel David Lutzato from Italy. He was known as a maskil from the Enlightenment movement, but he was a lonely man because he was considered too fry for the Chassidim and for the Litvisher. He was considered way out there, but he was too frum for the real maskilim. So he was kind of in no man's land. And I don't think we've ever quoted him before. Not usually someone you'd quote in a shir, but there's many questionable things he said and did, but there are many good things he said and did. So he wrote a pirush. He was a free thinker. You won't believe some of the things he said. He's from the maskilim, relatively from the fruma maskilim. But in number 20 is his pirush. He wrote a chumash, and on Parashas Yisro, he really wants to know if Yisro himself actually converted, and for sure Yisro's family. So he says in number 20, "V'gam acher ador hahu." Even on Umoitzim we find Chevers Keini, the husband of Yael. Alpha P that he was living in Eretz Yisrael, he was b'shalom with Yavin, who was a Tzayir Yisrael. He has a peace treaty. There's a reason why Sisra ran into that house for refuge. He was hoping it's sanctuary. Well, this guy's buddy buds with the enemy. He says, now, Eineni Omer, I'm not going to say that the house of Chevers loved Yavin, because Maisa Yael made Hepich B'seh. What Yael did obviously shows. So it wasn't the whole house, but maybe Chevers himself. And even if Chevers didn't love Yavin, there was at least a peace treaty. What was that all about? But Yavin was b'shalom Maybe there wasn't love, but there was Bishalom with Beis Chever. Sisra trusted Yael. Why? In the middle of a war, why did he trust her? If she's a Jewish woman, if Yael is a Jewish woman and Chevers is a Jewish man, this should be the last house Sisra runs into. How could there be such a pact and a peace treaty between them? If the Keini, if the family, now that's a mistake, it's meant to be Geirei Tzedek, not Keri Tzedek. If the Keini were taka true Geirim, and they lived amongst the Yidden for a while before, so why are they siding with the enemy? And more than this, you go a little later to the days of Shaul, the Keini were living amongst Malach, right? And Shaul told them to get out of here before the war. Hayitochen that Geirei Tzedek would live amongst the Haman, the disgraced nation, the abominable nation, that the Abisha said destroy them. More than that, Shaul told the Keini that leave before the war because you did chesed with the Yidden when we left Egypt. He should have said because you guys are Jewish. He didn't say that. So Shadal wants to taina that the whole family or a big chunk of the family were not actually Yidden. They were Geirei Toshav. Chever Keini was a ger toshav. Yael was a ger toshav. So there is, listen to this. The Magen Avraham in his Zayis Ranon has a shaila. Okay, it's not on the paper. Rabbi Akiva paskins, okay, that if a goy has a child with a Jewish woman, the child's a mamzer. It's not the halacha. Rabbi Akiva's take. Rabbi Akiva happens to descend from Sisra and Yael, according to the Gemara that they were together. Really? Where did I get that one from? All right, it's on the sheet. It's number 14. Number 14, go back to number 14. This is a Rav Nissim Gaon. This is Rav Nissim Gaon on Masechta Brachas. In the story of Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel was demoted because he harassed Rabbi Yeshua too many times. So the rabbis had a dilemma, so who should be the interim Nasi? So let's appoint Rabbi Akiva. So look at number 14. So the Gemara says, no, the rabbi said he doesn't have zchus avos. He doesn't have zchusim from his forebearers. And says Rav Nissim Goin, look in Sanhedrin, Perikol Yisrael Yeshla and Chelik, that mibnei bon of Shel Sisra, lomdu Torah b'Yerushalayim. The Gemara in Sanhedrin and Gittin, that Sanchedriv's kids taught Torah b'Yerushalayim, and it was Barabim, and it identifies them as Shemaiah and Avtalion. And it also says that Mibnei Bon of Shel Sisra taught Torah in Jerusalem. And who is that? Rabbi Akiva. We don't have it in Gemara. It's Rav Nissim Goin who says it. The Maharam Shif in his Chidushim to Gittin quotes this, and he says he doesn't think it's true. Because the Gemara identifies the Eineklach of Sisra, the Eineklach of Sancheriv, as Shemaiah and Avtalion, but it doesn't identify the Eineklach of Sisra. It says they just taught kids in Jerusalem. He says, Mashma, we don't know who they are. But the Rav Nissim Gaon said it's Rabbi Akiva. Yeah, it's not the words are the last words aren't there. Yeah. The man in Rabbi Akiva is not in the Gemara. So the Magen Avraham asks in his commentary Zayis Ranon and Medrash, if Rabbi Akiva does come from Sisra, and Rabbi Akiva paskins, if a goy has a child with a Jewish woman, the kid's a mamzer, so then he's a mamzer, because it keeps getting passed down generation to generation. Interesting shaila of the Magen Avraham. So there is a theory that Shadal may be right, that Chever was a ger toshav. Yael originally wasn't Jewish. It's a Mefudash Yalkut Shemoni number 12. She was married to Chever while she was also a goy, a ger toshav. And they weren't Yidden, and that's why there was a peace treaty between them and Yavin, and that's why Sisra ran it. But Yael had a soft spot for the Jews, so she wanted to kill Sisra to save the Yidden. Chever was furious because his wife had broken the pact. Chever divorces her. Yael says, listen, I lost my husband, I lost my home because I saved the Yidden. Let me join them. That's what made her become a Ger Tzedek. She was already pregnant by Sisra, but she converts during the pregnancy. Just like when she converts, she becomes a newborn, so does the child. The child's not a mamzer. Rabbi Akiva holds the child's a mamzer if a goy is with a Jewish woman and have a kid. But if a goyish woman conceives from a goy and converts, obviously the kid's not a mamzer. The kid's just a ger. So that answers the kasha the Magen Avraham, and it fits the Shadal with the Yalkut Shimoni. It answers many things. The issue is that most of the Chachmei Yisrael over the generations have assumed Yael was Jewish, and they explain that's why she killed Sisra with a peg, not with a sword, because there's an isser for a woman to wear the kalim of a man, including weapons of a man, and that's why she used a sword, right? Thank you. That's why she did not use a sword. Thank you very much. So. Anyhow, there's what to talk about that. I just threw that in because that was on my mind. But we have this Shiloh. Was she intimate with Sisra or not? The Gemara says yes, the Medrash says no, the Ma'azav in number 10 says no contradiction. She was, but it was L'Shem Shemayim. The Radak says it is a contradiction. Okay, hold on a second. In number 15, the Asora Mamoris from Reb Menachem Azaria of Fanu, the Rameh Mifanu is here tonight. We have him twice tonight, and he makes a splash, a big splash. In a Sefer Asora Mamoris, he says that Rabbi Akiva is very similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a lot to talk about that. Moshe Rabbeinu is the source of the written Torah. Zichru Toras Moshe Avdi. The 5 books of Moses are Toras Moshe. Because he says Moshe's neshama is etched from the same place in heaven where the Torah Shebeksav emanates from. The same sphere, the same level in Shemayim. Rabbi Akiva is the source of Torah Shebal Peh. It's a Mefurish Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says Stam Mishnah Rab Meir and Stam Sifra and Stam Tosefta. All these things were all students of Rabbi Akiva. V'chulu al liba de Rabbi Akiva. All of Torah Shebal Peh is really just teachings of going back to Rabbi Akiva. Says that Rameh Mifanu, Rabbi Akiva's soul comes from the source of Torah Shebal Peh. Says the Rameh, why was Sisra invincible that nobody could touch him? Why was it that way? It was Badavka that way. Because Sisra had never impregnated, any woman, but not the right woman. The potential he had to be the Zayd of Rabbi Akiva remained inside of him. And that's why nobody could destroy him. How ironic is it? The most invincible man gets killed by a woman? How'd that happen? He says, because during those 7 bias, during the 3rd one actually, he says, that's when Yael conceived. The moment that happened, he turns into Shmata. He lost all of his kayach. That's why this woman could kill him on the spot. His whole energy was the fact he had literally Rabbi Akiva inside of him. He had to impregnate a woman who would be the ancestor of literally, Mamash Kapshutai. Look what he writes in number 15. When the Pasuk says that Sisra's mother was gazing outside the window, it means the Shechina was gazing, looking after Sisra. Sisra was divinely protected throughout his life because the Shalshelis Yuchsim which was concealed in him until Yael conceived in the 3rd Bia, because only the 3rd one is called Shochav. The others are Kar and Nafal. Only one of them is called Shochav. Shochav is the most edel way of speaking about this intimacy. Because the only one which is mentioned, L'Shevach is Zois, as it says Shochav, which is Derech Kovet, like it says Vayishkavima Balaylahu. Azoy Zok Rameh Mifanu. So it gives an explanation of why that happened. So at this point, it sounds from the Mukubalim, it sounds like, Yael was together with Sisra. But You ever heard about Esther and Achashverosh? I think every single Purim shir we give, it doesn't matter what the topic is, we have to mention the fact that the Zohar in Parshas Kisei and the Arizal mentioned that Esther actually never touched Achashverosh. It wasn't her. It was a shade in her place. I have the Zohar in number 16. It's the Zohar in Kisei. You're going to ask, Achashverosh and Esther had yichud, and they were together. He says, no, even though they were in the same house, chas v'shalom. It's like what happened with Yosef. Do you know that Yosef left a lookalike demon in the hand of Eishes Potiphar? Vatonach bigdoi etzel. When it says that she kept his beged, it doesn't say levusha, it's bigdoi. Bigdoi means his traitor. A beged is a traitor. That refers to the negative element that can exist inside of you. The demon was like the Ra of Yosef that he was able to detach from himself. It was a lookalike. V'hacha Sisra, there's a big secret. And that's why Esther's name is Esther, which means a secret. Because she was concealed. The Shechina was master her. You ever heard? You know why she's called Esther? This is what the Zohar says. Because the Shechina was master, concealed her from Achashverosh, and gave him a Sheda, a female demon in her place. She herself was busy hanging out with Mordechai. And see the shir of the woman with two husbands for many more details about that. Mordechai knew the special name, Mefurish, the special name of God, and he could do this. He could summon that part of Esther. This is a well-known Zohar. So the Zohar says it about Esther, the Zohar says it about Yosef. In number 7, quickly, this is the Midbar Kedemus from the Chidah, and he says something fascinating, throw it in. He says, you know, the Arizal says that the shade of Esther was the negative part of her. There's a little bit of Ra, was the exterior, the negative, the clipper, the shell. It looked like her, it walked like her, it didn't talk like her, couldn't speak, but it did all the moves like her. And she had koyach from Chochmas Mordechai and Esther, lahafrida, to separate this lookalike demon, which is her exterior, from herself. Says the Chidah, I have a big kasha. Va'avinan, famous question of the Chidah. I don't know, we're gonna make it famous. You ready? Don't you know that the Arizal is quoted as saying that Vashti was, we're number 17, that Vashti was the negative part of Esther's soul. So how could Vashti be that plus this shade? And that's what it means. Malchusa yiten hamelech l'reusa toiva mimena. That Vashti's malchus will be given to her friend Hatoiva, the good part, the good side of her. To another woman who's the good side of Vashti, because Vashti was literally the bad side of Esther. The Keitzad Yiskaima, how could the Arizal have said both of these things? Right? Kasha of two Arizals. Says the Chidah, listen to the answer. Vashti was the negative part of Esther. She's dark. Within the good part of Esther, there's another relatively bad side. B'cheilek hatoiv that remained in Esther, there's the Ra Shebetoiv. And according to the Ra'im Mehem and the Arizal, that was the shade. So Achashverosh, he says, ended up with both bad sides of Esther. First he had the real bad side, Vashti. Then he had the relatively bad side, which was the shade. Okay? That's the Chidah's answer to the Shaila. Fascinating. Oh, but did you ever hear, you think Sisra was with Yael? Sisra was with a shade. Sisra was with a shade. What am I talking about? Look in number... what am I talking about? Here, look at number 24. Well, that's, yeah. And where did Esther's son Dayavish come from? Look at number 24, okay? This is from a Sefer, what?
Potiphar was intimate with the shade. Potiphar's wife was intimate with the shade.
Don't know. In number 24 is the Avas David. The Avas David. I'm sorry, number 21, that's right, number 21. Also the Avas David. This is Droshos of the Chidah, another sefer of his. He says in number 21, Baram Chazis Havis. I noticed the great rabbi Rabbi Yosef David Zal. You know who Yosef David is? Yosef David of Saloniki. He passed away, I think it was 1736. He was like a generation older than the Baal Shem Tov. Saloniki is in Greece. He was a Avbez in their big Rav. He wrote many Sfarim. He wrote the base David in Nigla, and he also, this is a sefer Tzemach David. The Chidah quotes him all the time. His Nigla, his Kabbalah, the Chidah quotes him all the time. So in this drasha, the Chidah says, I saw the Rabbi Yosef David Zal's sefer Tzemach David in the Haftarah of Bishalach. Shehevi Mishem Drushe Harizal, that the 7 Bilis Bolas Arasha Einoi Chaylik is not Chaylik on the Medrash. The Radak said it's a stira. Says Rabbi Yosef David B'Shem, some drush of the Arizal they were still yet to find, as the Chidah points out elsewhere. But Einoi Chaylik al Maimer B'Smicha Shmi Meil Shaloi Naga Boisei Rasha. The Medrash says they didn't touch. The Gemara says 7 Bias. It's not a contradiction. The Bias were with a shade. Ela Shade Haisel Muchanet. There was a demon there. Just like what happened with Esther happened with Yael. V'shachavim hasheda. So that's another answer to the Shaila. The Marzav gave his answer. The Mukubolim say there's a divna. The Beilus were with the shade. Now you understand why the Eibishter had to really testify that there was no touching, because there was. The Eibishter had to say that was the shade. This is really her. Wow. Hold on a second. So.
That would also explain how Sisra managed to get knocked off by a woman. It wasn't really much of a woman.
No, Yael herself killed him. That was Yael herself. Okay, join me number 24 quickly. Quickly, number 24. The Chidah says that the Tzemach David says, what the Gemara asks, we saw this in number 8, that how could Yael have had benefit from the Aveira? And the Gemara says, she didn't enjoy it. Sister was a Rasha. It wasn't her, it was a shade. Right? The Gemara asks, what? How could Rabbi Yochanan say that 7 times she had benefit from an Aveira? Who, what, where, when? Rabbi Yochanan's talking about him in a shade. Right? Obvious child. The Kosav, the Tzorech Leimar, so the Tzemach David, Rabbi Yosef David, the Rav in Saloniki, says, the Chol Zed Kamar Gemara, the Gemara was saying, Lamaida Havanira Le'inenu, based on Maris Ayin. It looked to us they were together, right? It was right. A person's caught committing adultery, right? And when they come, he's brought to Bezdin. Adam come and say, "We saw." Wasn't me. It was a shade. It's not going to hold up in Bezdin, right? Shade, please, shade. Yeah, right, mamish. It looked like he was with her. So v'tzarach she is ekfiyadin. Imu shaloi kedin. Even if it was truly a shade, but if it looks like it's her, and had it been her, there would have been a problem because of the Hana element. How could she have allowed that to happen? And therefore the Gemara says, no, it was legally fine, even based on what we saw, because there was no geschmack. But the truth of the matter was a shade, but no one knew about it. And that's what it means, the Eibishter testifies. That when Hashem said in the Medrash Rabbah, I testify, it means because no one else can. Who else knows it was a shade? Only me. That's what the Tzemach David says, right? Geschmack answer. The Chidah says, doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean based on what we saw? Who knew about it? It's not like Esther and Achashverosh. And even there, who would know about when she went, on that night when she went willingly, who would have known about it? 30 days she wasn't called. But let's leave Esther and Achashverosh for now. But he says about Yael, he says, who knew? Yael and Sisra were alone. No one saw, nobody knew. No one was there. Aveira spoke about it as a prophecy. In her song, it was a nevuah. Aveira Hanaviyah. So therefore she knew what happened privately. And Aveira was mefarsim what happened, and she was mefarsim that... whatever, she could be mefarsim that it wasn't her, it was a shade. I mean, so the Chidah himself learns, when Yael went in, she didn't know there was going to be a shade. She thought it was going to be her. So the Gemara Shai is, if she went in herself, thing will be her, and she's going to have Hana, so how do you explain that? So the Chidah said, the Gemara Shai, what was she thinking? That's the pshat in the Gemara. But either way, according to the Chidah or the Tzemach David, in truth, it wasn't her, it was a shade. Fascinating. So mamish, what happened to Yael happened to Esther. It gets even better. Bachrim, Chevers, do you know Esther was a Gilgul of Yael? Okay, this is where it all comes together. So join me in number 7. This is the Chidah and the Dvash Lefi. Go back to number 7. You know what the Arizal says? That Esther was a Gilgul of Yael. And Sisra was a spark, a nitzutz of Haman. Pardon me, Haman was a nitzutz of Sisra. The same story that happened before is happening again. And just like Sisra fell biyad Yael, Haman fell biyad Esther. And the Arizal said that in the song of Aveira, it says the stars from their paths fought. It's Rosh Tevis Haman. What's Haman doing in the story of Sisra? Because Sisra came back as Haman. V'noida, and it's known, says the Chidah, that just like a shade came to Yael between her legs, in order that Sisra should not impurify her, and he was with a shade, so too by Esther. It wasn't her chas v'shalom. Achashverosh was busy with Ra, so with her negative side, like we saw before. And Esther was Tar. The Efshri says this is what it means that Yael, the wife of Chevers Keini, is more benched than the women from the tent. You know what that means? In the 4th line of number 7, she's more benched than other women, other holy women that were moistened themselves for bia, married women that were intimate with other men, in order to save Jews. She's better than them. You know why? Because them, they did the right thing to save other people. But because, right, the famous story 400 years ago with the pirates that captured the whole group of Yidden, they were going to kill them all, but there was one woman that realized if she seduces the captain, she'll save the whole crew. And some poskim said she was allowed to do it, but she still ushered to her husband. Because she wasn't forced in the intimacy, she chose to do it. So they were ushered to her husbands because there was no onus on the bia, like the Ma'arik writes, famous letter. But Yael is more benched than them because she b'chlal wasn't intimate. It was a shade. And that's why the Aveira calls her, she's currently still the wife of Chevers. Assuming she's a Jew and Chevers is a Jew. But if she was Mizana, she should be ushered to her husband. No, it wasn't her. She's mutter. Why should Chevers believe it was her shade? Because the Aveira was a prophet. That's another raya that Al Pi prophecy could pass kan halacha. Anyhow, a fascinating chidah and dvash lefi. So, look at number 5. This is from an old sefer. It's impossible to read. The Minchas Eliyahu, Rebbe Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir. Rebbe Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir, the great rabbi in Izmir. That's right, in Turkey. And he was also about a couple years old and a couple decades older than the Baal Shem Tov. And he wrote many Sforim. He was a great darshan. I mean, if you look, his Sforim, Medrash Talpiyah, Shevet Musar, all of his Sforim are highly intriguing. You can imagine if he spoke, it was something to hear. He once spoke Shabbos, and one of the mispalim came over, right? One of the guys that came just for the drasha. Not a mispal. He came for the drasha. And he said, Rabbi, I'm not going to tell you what I was going to do this afternoon. But I will tell you that after your speech, I'm not going to do it. So he was an effective darshan. Okay? In his Minchas Eliyahu, he says, number 5, why was it that Esther and Zimnoi, she invited Haman, and she killed him through a mishta of wine? Why did she get Haman drunk? Like when it comes to Mrs. Bezdin, first Bezdin gets the guy drunk and kills him, right? Well, why did Esther get him drunk? Both days, a mishta hayayin. What was that all about? So he says, don't you know, based on what the Arizal says in Sefer Gilgulim, that Esther has a spark of Yael, the wife of Chevers, and Haman was a spark of Sisra. Since the first time around, she killed him with a beverage, with a drink, with an intoxicating beverage, warm milk. So now she upped her game, right? Wine. Warm milk actually might even be more effective. V'loche nira, since the first time, the nitzachin was b'mashke, like it says, he wanted water, she gave him milk, and she got him drunk through milk. So that's why, so to here, when they were both in their Gilgul, she kills him through mishta hayayin. Interesting, huh? It wasn't stam, this was carefully planned out from Esther's from Esther's point.
It's interesting, the same combination with Yehudis.
Speaking in Yehudis, look at number 19. Number 19. Okay, we're jumping everywhere. I don't know what we did, what we didn't do, but too bad. Number 19 is the Rameh Mifanu in his Sefer Gilgul in Neshamas. The Rameh Mifanu says that Yael and Sisra, they did it once. They did it again. He doesn't say Esther and Haman, that's the Arizal. But the Rameh says that Yael came back as Yehudis, the story of Yehudis in the middle of the second Beis HaMikdash, who killed the Greek guy. And it says that Rameh that Yehudis was accomplished more than Yael. Because Yehudis did not have to be intimate with the all she cut his head stamazoi. She gave him milk. Well, Yael gave milk in order Sisra should fall asleep. And Yehudis gave cheese. But here she didn't have to go through the intimacy. But it was the same story repeating itself. What gets even better is that some Kabbalists say that the same story, Yael and this Greek, before then it was Esther and Haman, it's the same souls, and before them it was Yael and Sisra, and before them it was Cain and Hevel's extra sister who Cain took. The Arizal talks about this a number of times. Hevel was born with two twin sisters. Cain had one, so Cain killed Hevel over the extra girl. Cain was taking a woman that did not belong to him. The same thing happened with Sisra and Yael, Yehudis and this governor, and Esther and Haman. Esther and Haman. So, hold on a second. Look at this. Come number 22. Number 22 is back to the Lechem Lefi Ataf. Unbelievable. You ready for this? Let's read it. Number 22. Haman is a spark of Sisra, and Esther was a Gilgul of Yael. And just like Sisra fell in the hand of Yael, Haman fell in the hand of Esther, and Kechavman Rosh Tevis Haman. Rabbeinu Arizal b'Sefer HaGilgulim. It's brought in the Baal Shevet Musa brings in Minchas Eliyahu, and we had that in number 5. Ubozeh Nicholay says, now I understand why Esther. Okay, now he just quotes what we saw, that why Esther invited him to the meal and she killed him through wine. Okay, we saw that already. Go down 2 lines. The Yesh Lirmas, you know why Sisra's, the end of his name is Ra, Sisra? Because what's Reish Aleph Gematria? 201. What's the Gematria of Haman B'Milu? If you spell out the Hey, the Mem, and the Nun, the Hey Yud is 15, the 2 Mems is 80, is 95, and the Nun is another
100.
136. Comes out to 201.
right? 201, Reish Aleph. What are you staring at me for? No? This is basic things. So Sisra, the end of his name, the end of Sisra is Haman. The end of Sisra, the Rei is Haman. Soif Sisra, the Skalgal is Haman. Fine. Ubozeh Yisyashiv, look what he says now. Now I understand what it says in Megillah Daf Tezayin, that Haman was falling on the mitzvah. Right? The Gemara says it should say he fell. And Rabbi Elazar says it teaches me that a malach cast him on it. And the Chidah wants to know in the Nachal Eshkol, since Haman had no kavanah, right? The second question we asked, how was he framed? How could the malach do this? And he pushed on it so much that the king wanted to kill him. It's Sheker Gomer when he was innocent. Why was Haman's downfall? Through being framed for a crime he had no intention to commit. He says, beautiful. When Yael killed Sisra, why did she kill him? Because of his tormenting the Jews. But right before he died, he violated 7 Mrs. Besdin. He never suffered for that. He never was punished for his crime of 7 Gili Arayasin. So he had to come back and get killed for that. So when he was being framed, he wasn't getting killed for crime he didn't commit. He did commit it. The same guy with the same woman. It's the same Haman when he was Sisra and the same woman. Esther is Yael. Asi Shaper, Begilgul Rishon, he fell between her legs, and that's why the Malach pushed him there. Lim Tsoy Avoy No Yarishon, for the first sin he was never punished for. And he says, now I could say without the Gemara. You know why it says Haman Neufel, that he was falling? Because it's something he was constantly doing every time he met this woman who's falling for her. He keeps falling for her. His Neufel from the Bekoidim, Begilgul is still falling Gamata. And then the Efshala, for this is, look at the Efshala Farish. This is, the Melech says, Hagam lichboish es hamalka imi baboyes. You ready for this? Malka's gematria 100. If you add a yud, is 110. Where are you getting yud? Lichboish es hamalka imi. Imi is im yud. It's 110. That's gematria Yael. So what the Melech was saying like this, or the Eibishter was saying, Hagam lichboish es hamalka imi. You're being kovish Yael, you're coming again, taking hamalka imi. Malka is 100. Imi means im yud with 10. It gets you 110. Im yud babayis. You also want to get Yael in the house. It's not enough what you did in the tent last time round. Now you want the house. Loi dai lecha, that you were kovish her in the tent in the desert where people weren't there. But now you have the chutzpah in the house. You remember when Achashverosh came in, the Gemara said, in the beginning, he said, oh, in the house, or in the outside. You know what he meant? Woe in the outside last time. When you were in the field, in the tent. Woe in the house this time round. So, and they go back to number 13. So out of number 13, now he says, now I understand why Haman thought that Esther would go for his advantage. If he would just give the green light, Esther would fall. In number 13, Rav Bukovza answers, Al Pia Omer Hakol Masukan. His mazel saw that he already was intimate with her one time. Since the last time round, he was intimate with her. That's why he felt such a connection. That's why he was so sure that if he was borrowed, that if he would just say, I'm on, she's already there. So it answers both of our shilas. Why he was so sure she would fall for him, and why he was killed for a crime that he did commit. Fascinating. One more thing. Turn the page to the side. Go to number 23. This is also Lechem Lefi Ataf all the way at the end. He says, Mashachayev Od, he's quoting here also from Rebbe Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir, but in Rebbe Eliyahu's Sefer, it's very old print. Here it's a bit better. Why Chayev to Lipsumi Bepuria? He says, I was Makabel from Menachem Ashkenazi. This is Rebbe Eliyahu HaKohen speaking. I was Makabel from Menachem Ashkenazi. Esther is from the source of, Esther really had the soul of Chava. And Haman had the soul of the snake. The Zohar says the snake was the embodiment of the Satan. That energy, the Samach Mem, that's the Malach of Esav. Haman's Amaleki. Amaleki comes from Esav. Haman and Esther were a Gilgul of Chava and the Nachash. The Gemara says that the Nachash actually had relations with Chava and put Zuamo inside of her. Now it's true that Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim says whoever thinks that the Gemara is literal is an absolute idiot. The Rambam says the Gemara, when it says the Nachash was with Chava, doesn't mean literal. It means he casted his Mishugasan onto her, convinced her to sin, but not that they actually were intimate. But in the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it says, pretty black and white, not only they were intimate, but Cain was born from that union. Cain and Hevel were only half brothers. Cain and Konisi Ishas Hashem is because Cain was more angelic than Hevel. Because Cain's father, the Nachash, was the embodiment of a Malach. That's what Chava meant. I got a man with Hashem. Anyhow, fascinating. So he says that's why Esther invited him to drink wine. You know why? So before we saw it's because the same intoxicating drink was used with Yael and Sisra. He said something else. The snake got Chava by the eights of the das. It was a geffen, and the grapes were squeezed into wine. That's how Chava. That's why Adam fell for, didn't recognize it, and that's why Esther's from the source of Chava. She returned to Haman, who's from the Nachash, Mida Keneged Mida. You cause my death through wine, I'll cause your death through wine. But accordingly, I can also answer the same shilas now. That if it's true that they're a continuation of the story of Nachash and Chava, so the same thing, it explains why The Rambam says the Gemara is not literal, but the Gemara says that the Nachash was Baal Chava. So Haman felt he was once intimate with Esther. He was once intimate with Esther, and that's why, the same answer we gave before about Yael, just applied over here. That's why he felt that there was this connection. And when he was framed for a crime, he had committed it. Because the Nachash, what suffering did the Nachash receive for Bia with Chava? Nothing. Now, when Haman was killed, that was the punishment for the Nachash being with Chava. So you can answer the same two questions and the same style, but going back to a much earlier story. Okay, Chevers, we're going to end over here.